Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. Today, a salute to a local hero, singer, songwriter, and social activist.
It was raining hard in Frisco. I needed one more fare to make my night.
American troubadour Harry Chapin from Greenwich Village. He blazed across the skies of folk rock music in the 70s like a comet, at the same time devoting feverish energy to social causes. Harry Chapin wanted nothing less than to change the world. He was just getting started when he died 40 years ago, still in the prime of life. His close friend Bill Ayers, partner in Harry's mission to end world hunger, remembers him fondly. Next. Bill Ayers, old friend, good to see you. Welcome to the program.
Happy to be here.
How did you first meet Harry?
Well, I was doing a radio show for the ABC radio network called On This Rock. I was on all over the country, but the sister station in New York was WPLJ. So I had done a show with Tom Chapin, Harry's brother. And at the end of it, he said, "Boy, that was good. You ought to do a show with my brother. He loves to talk." I always said that was the understatement of the century because Harry did love to talk.
Well, you were a DJ. You were, in fact, just as a little fun fact, you were a priest at the time, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I was a Roman Catholic priest out on Long Island, and I had about 2 or 3 different jobs. I was in a parish, but I was also doing shows for the U.S. Catholic Conference, and I suggested doing a show that featured rock music. They said, "Oh." I said, yeah. So they let me do it. And that's how I got to know Harry. And I knew about his music. My friend Pete Fornatel, who was one of the great New York disc jockeys, knew about
wonderful.
Harry. And he said, "Yeah, you ought to do a show with this guy."
Yeah. What did you think of his music?
Oh, I loved it because what I loved were the story songs. He was a storyteller.
Sure.
That was his specialty, telling stories. So obviously Cats in the Cradle was a story. And Taxi was a story, but there were a lot of other stories. Mr. Tanner, I mean, so many stories. And he got inside the experience and took you right there so that you felt the experience.
Yeah, we're gonna feature at least one of those songs in a bit. But I want you to tell the audience a little bit more about Harry's background. He comes from a very artistic family. On his mother's side, his uncle, his father.
Yes, they were very artistic. One of his grandfathers was a famous painter and photographer. He was really great. And then his other grandfather, Kenneth Burke, was a renowned sort of philosopher and teacher.
A literary critic too.
Absolutely, yeah. So Harry came from that kind of a background. They weren't rich, but they were rich in culture.
Yeah, his father was a drummer.
He was a jazz drummer, played in big bands, and was away a lot.
Yeah, it didn't help the family situation much, but yeah, he played with, I think, Tommy Dorsey and Woody Herman.
Yes, he did.
The brothers, there were several of them, and they were all musical, the Chapin brothers. And a fun fact number 2 I found out is, I don't know, one of the brothers, I think, said Harry was the least proficient musically of the group.
Yeah, Tom said that, and it was true at that point. You know, they were better than he was, but he learned fast and he got better.
Yeah, he sure did. And yet it took him a while to come around to music. He exhibited no particular great ambition early in his life. And
well, he was a filmmaker. He went to Ethiopia and did some films there. And he did a film about boxing, about the heavyweight champions called Legendary Champions. It won an award.
I got a kick out of his brother Tom saying that when Harry returned from Ethiopia, and of course had been away from the band, the Chapin Brothers band, for however many months, they kicked him out of the band.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They did. he just wasn't up for it. And he had performed and not done well. So he decided he needed to have his own band. And he went out and found some really great players. And it's funny, just recently, I went to a concert. It was called the Docu Concert. And his drummer, Howie Fields, and Big John Wallace, famous Big John, they were there and performed with Tom and his band and Jen Chapin, Harry's daughter, and her band. It was an absolutely great performance. And guess what, folks? Big John can still hit those notes.
Wow. And this, I take it, was a commemoration of Harry's 40th anniversary of his death?
Yes, that's right.
He was only, what, 39 years old, and this horrible accident on the Long Island Expressway. And he was in the prime of his career.
He had several big hits, and, number one hits, and he had a whole genre of music, the story songs, that people really got into, because you got into the story with him and you felt for the characters. So it wasn't just the music, it was the stories.
Sure. And I want to talk about Taxi. I was just trying to put it in context in terms of, I think it was around 1971, when he really turned strongly to music and started to make his mark. And of course, it was in 81 that this horrible accident had. So he had such a brief, an extraordinary career.
He did a lot in a short period of time.
Anyway, the story songs. Let's talk about Taxi a little bit. That was a huge hit, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, number one hit. And it was just, he got this idea. Well, first of all, he thought he was going to be driving a taxi in New York City. It never happened, but he did get he did go down and get the license. And so he just imagined that this old girlfriend of his from several years before got into the cab out in San Francisco. And that's how it started. He created these characters. Sometimes they were real, and other times he just made them up. In this case, this woman was a real person.
Well, he said himself, Taxi was about, I think he said 60% true. And as you say, it was, a taxi driver, and it happens by, coincidence to pick up an old girlfriend on the street, like 20 years later after they've split. And so they have this kind of melancholy cab ride. And before we get to that, Billy Joel remembers when he first heard the song. Listen to this.
In '72, I remember hearing Taxi on the radio and thinking, this is something different.
What was different about Taxi? What's Billy talking about, Bill?
Well, it was just one of these sort of kind of things that could have happened. It didn't happen, but it could have happened. And just the notion that he had an opportunity back then and he lost it. Now, Harry, actually, the last album that he did was called Sequel, and he did a sequel to this story. And he meets her again. And he told me that he wanted to do another one, the third one, when he was like 80 years old. Of course, that never happened.
It was a lost love. It's kind of a bittersweet re-engagement in this taxi. They went their separate ways, got what they wanted supposedly when they were young, but it drove them apart. And it's pretty bittersweet as he drops her off at the mansion she now lives in. He sings this. Listen to this.
And she said, we must get together, but I knew it'd never be arranged. Then she handed me $20 for a $2.50 fare. She said, Harry, keep the change.
Harry, keep the change. And that's such a cool line. I like the hair standing up on my arm. Well, another man might have been angry. Another man might have been hurt. But another man never would have let it go. I stuffed a bill in my shirt. I mean, that's real life. That's really what happened. Whether it did or not, in my mind, that happened. I can picture the whole thing.
So, Bill, what Billy says, picturing it, that was kind of the essence of Harry's songs, wasn't it? His story song.
Yeah, you know, he catches a moment and brings you into it, and you get involved emotionally in the story. And he did that with many, many songs.
Yeah. Let's talk about Cat's Cradle. I think was that his first #1 hit, or do we even
Cats
remember
in the
which?
Cradle was a song that he didn't write. His wife wrote, Sandy wrote that. It was a poem that she wrote, actually about the way her first husband was treated by his father, who was an absentee father. And Harry said, wow, that's really good. And he put the chorus to it, the Cats in the Cradle and Silver Spoon, Little Boy. And so he wrote the chorus and she wrote the song. So it was a combination of the two of them, and it became a very big hit. And it's still used today. You see it, I saw it on television just recently in a beer commercial of all things.
Yeah, it just captured popular culture at the time, and obviously still is. Let's look at what was going on back then in terms of our popular culture, kind of appropriating Cats in the Cradle. Look at these scenes.
Hey, what's Cats in the Cradle?
It's a song from the 70s. You've heard it.
The cat's in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy blue and the man on the moon.
Why don't you just play your Cats in the Cradle video?
Oh, hey, son of a... I love that song. That's got that nice message in it.
How we doing?
Cats in the Cradle.
Whoa, where are you going?
I'm gonna go play catch with my son before it gets too late, like Cats in the Cradle.
It's all very Cats in the Cradle. I don't want to get into it.
Cause it's really plain and simple when it came to me. There's a lot of people just like me. There's a whole lot just like me.
Cats in the cradle and the silver spoon.
Yeah. Little boy blue and the man on the moon.
When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. Donkey.
Isn't that marvelous? Homer Simpson among them is singing Cats in the Cradle. By the way, I should tell our audience, even though I think we put it up on the screen a couple of times, we're showing scenes from a film made about Harry, a tribute to Harry, the film's called Harry Chapin, When in Doubt, Do Something.
And it was one of Harry's great lines. When in doubt, do something.
Yeah. We're very grateful to the producers for letting us use some of these excerpts. And I just want to tell you folks out there, if you want to find that film, the easiest way is to go online to harrychapinmovie.com. The movie's called Harry Chapin, When in Doubt, Do Something. You and I were talking about Cats in the Cradle the other day, Bill, and you talked about how it has a whole father-son resonance to it. Tell me.
Absolutely. It changed the lives of very many fathers. I remember a guy telling me, a fellow that I met in a television studio one day many years ago, and he said, oh, that song, he said, it changed my life. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, my son bought a copy of it and he handed it to me. We put it on. He said, Dad, listen to this with me. Kid was like 10 years old. And my friend sat there and the tears got in his eyes. And he realized why the kid was playing it for, because he was an absentee father himself. And he said, Bill, it changed my life. He said, I decided I needed to be home with my son more often. And that's just one story. There were many, many stories of people saying that song changed their relationship that they had with their kids.
Such a resonance for Harry in his life, because his father, as you said earlier, was not really around. He was out on the road being a jazz drummer all the time.
Yes, absolutely. And so Harry, because he had a whole bunch of kids, and he would work like mad to get home to be with the kids. There was many a time when he would get in a plane, one of these little small planes, and hire some guy to drive him back to New York when he couldn't get a regular flight. So he could be there for the next day for the soccer practice or for whatever it was. And he worked very hard to be present to his kids while he was still having an amazing career. It was juggling, but he did it.
Yeah, he was a man on fire, it seems, because he's doing the music. He's traveling all over the place doing concerts, But there was this other piece of Harry, very important piece, you know, the social activist, the man committed to social causes. And he was feverish about that. He was doing as much work for charity, let's call it, or maybe more, as he was doing for himself, and, you know, to concerts, you know, that he was getting paid to do.
Yeah, see, he got the idea about hunger, and he understood the notion that we needed to get beyond charity. Charity is wonderful. It's the first step. So what we tried to do was not just to create organizations that would feed people, but rather organizations that would help people to get out of poverty.
I'm going to come back to that, because I want to embellish what we were just talking about, and let you hear from Harry himself talking about his commitment to, you know, these causes. Listen to this.
I do about 220 concerts a year, about 100 of which are benefits, about 60 of whom are for World Hunger Year. I also do a bunch for the Performing Arts Foundation. I also do about a half a dozen a year for Ralph Nader. I've done a couple so far this year for Citizens Action Fund. I also do things for multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, cancer care, cystic fibrosis, and a couple of other things.
You know, you kind of wonder, how did he do it? How did he manage to hold a family together, hold a career together? I mean, he was constantly on the run.
Harry was on the run, and he moved very quickly, and he really focused himself. When he was there, he was there. And he wasn't there for very long. He was gone doing something else. But when he was there, he was truly present. And that was true with his family. It was true with his career. And it was true with the work that he and I did. We went all over the country doing hungerthons. We did the first one in New York City in 1975 on WNEW-FM. And we stayed up for 24 hours and raised consciousness and funds, and brought all kinds of people on who were working on hunger and poverty. And then Harry said, let's do more of them. So we started going around the country. And then he got the idea to start an organization. It wasn't my idea. My idea was to do the concerts and to do the hungerthons. But he said, no, we need an organization. And we called it, at the time, World Hunger Year, WHY. It's now called Why Hunger, and it's been around for all of these years, 40 years. And he would do concerts to raise money. So, for example, we did one in Detroit at CKLW was the station. And, you know, it was the biggest station in the Midwest, reached throughout the whole Midwest. And he and I went on and talked about hunger and poverty. And then he left and went over to a concert in Detroit in Cobo Hall that had John Denver, Gordon Lightfoot, and James Taylor. Wow, that was some concert. And it raised $156,000. And now that's a lot of money today, but imagine what it was like then. That was a tremendous amount of money. And so we did the concert. He did the concert with those guys, but then he would bring each one of them on. He'd say, I'll have them call you. So I get a call. This is James Taylor. Oh, okay. And I would talk to that guy, and then I would talk to the next one, the one after that. So we got to do the hungerthon, and we did them all over the country. We did probably about 8 or 10 of them. And he was there. We would fly all over the place. And we were reaching really millions of people about hunger and poverty. And what we were trying to say was we need to get to the root cause of hunger, which is poverty. And that's what the organization did. We decided to start this organization called, at the time was called World Hunger Year, WHY. It's now called Why Hunger. And the idea of it was to work with all these grassroots organizations all over the country. And we still do that to this day. We work with thousands of grassroots organizations all over the country, and some all over the world now. We've been doing that for quite a while. You know, helping them to get the support that they need to help people get out of poverty.
We should point out that, you know, as you said, you and he were both committed to this cause, and you started this organization. And as you saw it, you're going to do these concerts. And you remember back to those years, there was the We Are the World and Bangladesh and those kinds of things. But Harry's philosophy, and he brought it to you and said, look, if we're going to do this, if we're going to really make a difference on this horrible issue of world hunger, we got to be around today. We got to be around tomorrow. You know, a concert's one day, and it's great. It raises money, but we got to be here. You know, today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year.
That's why we started the organization. Exactly.
Yeah, and he just never stopped, you know, buttonholing people about. I mean, there's Senator Pat Leahy, Vermont, is just one of the earliest ones, you know, on the political end of things that he got into this, and he's still involved, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Pat is I think he's the longest serving senator right now. I think he's 81 years old, and he's a great guy. We still communicate with each other, and he has helped Why Hunger to do all kinds of things over the years, especially feeding kids. That's one of the things that he and I have worked on. And one of the things that's been particularly heartwarming for me is that Joe Biden, in his presidency now, is trying to eliminate childhood hunger. And so he's putting a lot more money into school lunches and school breakfasts and the summer feeding program. You know, that during the summer, only about 10 or 15% of the kids who get school meals get a summer meal. I found that out many years ago and went down to Washington with Pat and worked on it. And so now Biden has improved that program so that kids all over the country are getting meals now as we speak. And that wasn't happening before. So that all of that work started with Harry, but Pat Leahy has picked it up, and other people have as well. And President Biden has picked it up. And so he's out to end hunger in America. You know, Harry would just be absolutely thrilled to know that we have a president who's out to end hunger in America, starting with childhood hunger. That's what we were all about. But we also knew that you needed to do it from the grassroots up. You needed to do it from the policy, from the top down, but also from the grassroots up. And that's why we started Why Hunger. We're a grassroots support organization. And there are tens of thousands of these organizations all over the country that we help to support. And we have a hotline, the Why Hunger hotline, 1-800-5-HUNGRY. People call that, and we can connect them to emergency food in their neighborhoods. So during the pandemic, we've connected over 1 million people to emergency food, recognizing that's only the first step. The next step is to get them involved in a program that can get them out of poverty.
You know, Harry, because of his fame in the music world, of course, enlisted a lot of folks from that side of things to be helpful. I mean, Bruce Springsteen comes to mind,
Sure.
for first and foremost. And
He's still helping us to this day.
Yeah, I've been at a concert with you that Springsteen gave in Asbury Park for the cause. It was interesting in this film. Again, there's Bruce is talking about, you know, Harry working for himself, doing, you know, concert, doing his music, being a performer, you know, and cashing a check, but also working for the cause. And I just found this charming. Listen to Bruce Springsteen.
And he said one thing that I always remembered. He said, gee, you know, I play one night for me and one night for the other guy. And later on, when I was trying to put my music to some pragmatic use, I remembered what he said. Not being bent to extremism, I wasn't as generous as he was. But
Bruce saying, kind of self-effacing, Bill, I wasn't as generous as Harry was.
Nobody was.
Nobody was. But Bruce has been a mainstay, and
oh yeah, he's really one of our partners. He's been great, and he continues to be.
Yeah. What do you think Harry would make of this world were he around today? And
well, he would be thrilled that we have a president who wants to do the kinds of things that he wanted to do, to end hunger in America, to fight hunger around the world, and especially to end childhood hunger. He would just be thrilled. And I'm hoping that this president can get the things done that he wants to do, because we will have a much better country, a country with kids not hungry, a country with people working and not having to get handouts.
Well, on the 40th anniversary. I hate to call it that, but 40 years ago, Harry died.
Yes.
Tragic accident. And there was recently a concert at Eisenhower Park out there on the island, and to salute him. And we're saluting him in this program. And I really thank you for your insights and your remembrances of your time with Harry Chapin. I mean, you and he were like brothers for a lot of years.
Well, actually, it was only 8 years, I mean, we thought we were going to be around together when we were 80, and I'm still here, but he's not, and hasn't been for 40 years. But we've managed to keep his work going. We have wonderful people. The woman who runs the organization now took my place several years ago. Noreen Springstead is doing a marvelous job. We have an organization of people who are very dedicated. A lot of them, most of them women.
Yeah.
And that's something that wasn't happening before.
Bill Ayers, it's great to see you. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Tony.
Would you please welcome Harry Chapin.
I'm talking about love. Well, she asked me, what is it good for? She asked me, what could it do? She asked me, what does it feel like? And I told her all that I knew. I'm talking about love. Love can't solve anybody. I'd be wrong if I said that it could. I was talking about love can't save anybody. It just makes your body feel good. 2, 3, 4. She was downright delicious, delighted. She was something jumping for joy.